Parshas Korach, Tov Shin Pei Beis. Now really, the theme that we speak about just about each and every year when we speak about Parshas Korach is, of course, the theme is we speak about the dangers, the perils, and the ramifications of machlokes. And really, that's what this parsha is all about. And unfortunately, we need to say, and all of you here know how much I despise and stay away from politics, and of course I'm not speaking about anything specific or anything political, but let's just say that machlokes is something which is in Yonah D'Yoma, and it's something that every member and every faction of Klal Yisrael has to think about, and we all have to improve, and we have to bend over backward to make sure that we stay far, far away of even any small thought of being in a machlokes is dangerous. And really, it would seem to us, the Nesivos Shalom says, that the punishment received by Korach and his followers, as we know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a special punishment where the earth opened up and Korach and all 250 people, men, women, children, families, everybody went down and was covered up and buried by the earth. And it would seem that this punishment is something way out of proportion. Imagine that even small children should go down, and actually we've spoken about this in previous years, why it was that way, why it was that even small children went down and were punished, and we won't get into that this year. But it would seem that this punishment is something way out of proportion. But really, we need to, as thinking people, we need to think a little bit deeper. And we need to realize that the message to us that we need to study, and the message to us that we really need to learn, and it should be apparent from learning Parshas Korach, and it should be very scary to every one of us too, is that while the question is there, that you might think this is very far out of proportion for what Korach did, but the lesson and the scary lesson that needs to be learned is that no, it really is not out of proportion. We need to realize that this is the way that Hashem looks at and deals with those involved in machlokes. We have a very skewed view and look on what's important in the world and what's not important to the world, what we think is important to Hashem, what we think is not important to Hashem. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is of course the image of perfection, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a totally different idea. And if Korach was punished along with everyone else in such a severe way, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us and telling us is that this is the way I look at machlokes. That when a person gets involved in machlokes, this is the type of punishment they could expect. And yes, you might want to think twice before you stick your nose into or stoke the flames of a machlokes, because the punishment for machlokes is different and more severe than even things that are specifically and explicitly prohibited and warned about in the Torah. We don't see anywhere in the Torah, right? The Torah tells you not to have machlokes. It's something that every person has to know before they even learn Torah. And the reason being, says in Nesivos Shalom, the reason that machlokes is so severe and so bad is because machlokes damages the dveikus between Hashem and Klal Yisrael. And we know that since we know the tachlis, the purpose of the world, is to have the connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, when a person gets involved in machlokes, you are ruining that. And when you ruin the purpose of the world that we spoke a couple of months ago at length about Shalom, the purpose of the world is that people should be as one Klal Yisrael and as one Klal Yisrael to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you, as a person that caused machlokes and caused the rift between Hashem and Klal Yisrael, the punishment for that is different. It's way beyond anything we could comprehend, and it is very severe. And just realize that it is only here by machlokes that the Torah uses a lashon of ki niatzu ha'anashim o'ela es Hashem vidatem. You should know ki niatzu ha'anashim o'ela es Hashem. A lashon of antagonizing and angering HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a different and severe type of Aveira. And really, the concept we've spoken about when we spoke about the other way, we've spoken about Kedusha. The Torah speaks so much about being holy, about Kadesh, Atzmacha, B'murtalach. It's a theme that the Nesivos Shalom speaks about so much in different places in the Torah. But we know that when we speak about Kedusha, the Torah gives so many warnings about Kedusha, Kedoshim Tiyu, and on, many different psukim. Why does the Torah speak so much about Kedusha? Because it's the opposite of what we said about machlokes. Because the connection between Hashem and Klal Yisrael, which is the purpose of the world, is dependent upon Kedusha. The pasuk tells us, "Va'anshe kodesh tiyun li." And Rashi says over there, by Va'anshe kodesh tiyun li, im atem kedoshim, if you are holy, harei atem shali. Hashem says that you belong to me. V'im loi, and if not, einchem shali. If you don't have Kedusha, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're not mine. And what greater punishment can there be for a Jew than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chas v'shalom, saying that you are not mine, that you're not a member of my group, you're not a member of my family. And Kedoshim, as we know, is not even one of the Taryag mitzvahs. But yet we say, because it produces the connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, we say that without Kedusha, you can't be connected. And that is why Kedusha was even before Kabbalas HaTorah. The Torah tells us, V'yatem tiyu li mamleches kohanim v'goy kodosh. Even before Kabbalas HaTorah. It's a rule of the world. You need Kedusha to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Klal Yisrael. The Torah does not delineate a punishment for one who is not Kadosh. We have to be Kedoshim to you, but the Torah does not say a punishment for somebody who's not Kadosh. And that is because Kedusha is the essence of what it means to be a Jew, what it means to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now we get back to our Parsha, the flip side of that. The Chet of Machlokes that Korach did, it went to the very essence of being connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And one, as we know, one who causes machlokes, especially with the Rebbe, as Korach did with Moshe Rabbeinu, or others, he's having a machlokes with the Shechina. A person that begins a machlokes between your Rebbe, between one Rebbe and another Rebbe, between one Rav and another Rav, you get involved in the machlokes, you are getting into a machlokes with the Shechina. And everybody can understand that in their own way, but the lesson is there to be learned. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a special unique punishment for Balei Machlokes. And once Korach cut his connection with his Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, he cut his connection and his conduit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is really the theme as you go through the Seder Bamidbar, you go through Chumash Bamidbar, we see that so many things happen that unfortunately cause so many severe punishments to Klal Yisrael. In the Dora Midbar, we see that there were a few things that Klal Yisrael did, and they received tremendous punishment because they distanced themselves from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We had the Mesoinim, we had those who complained that they wanted more food, and they complained that they wanted more food. They were punished severely. There was a Chet Meraglim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the place of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Eretz Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves Eretz Yisrael. It's the dwelling place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the perfect place for every member of Klal Yisrael. The Meraglim went ahead and spoke against the home, the domain, the place of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There was a severe punishment. They separated themselves from Hashem. They took the place of Dveikis to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Eretz Yisrael, and they spoke against it. That is also a Baal Machlokes. And we need to understand, and we need to think when we learn this week's Parsha, that what happened with Korach is put in the Torah, and it's meant that we should read about it every year because it's an negea to us. It's a real lesson for us, and it's something that we as thinking people, we as people in our generation, in our times, have to understand that it's not just a historic fact. That every one of us has to wake up every morning and say, how can I promote Shalom? How can I stay away from a machlokes? How can I build a friendship? How can I go back over the years of my life and see maybe there's somebody that I'm not in such good terms with, maybe there's somebody that I once had some sort of machlokes, and it's time to put that behind us. It's time to take a few minutes and call, apologize, be mevater, understand that the last thing we want is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should look at us and look at any person or someone that we know and say that this person is chas v'shalom, a Baal Machlokes. It is worse, almost worse, than any other thing, any other punishment that we see in the Torah without it being explicitly commanded. HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at that as a requisite. There needs to be shalom. There can't be machlokes. So, of course, when we learn this parsha and we go to read this parsha on this Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael, actually they read it last week, so people in Eretz Yisrael already have worked so much on shalom over the past week, but we have to leave this Shabbos. When we go past this Shabbos, we have to come out as different people. Most of the time, when there's machlokes, Korach had very, very good reasons. You know that? You ask anybody, Korach, his reasons were all based on really, really good things. Why should Moshe Rabbeinu be different? We all want to be Oved Hashem. We all were born to the same Shevet Levi. Whatever Korach's reasons were, the bottom line is, if you think about it, first of all, most of the time it's selfish reasons. Most of the times it's about kina and taiva and kavod all mixed into one. And most of the time it's really, really not about Torah. It's not l'shem shamayim. And even if it is l'shem shamayim, there still shouldn't be a machlokes. So let us all sit down this Shabbos, think a little bit, especially everybody here who are people of such Bali Chesed, Oyev Shalom, V'roidev Shalom. Let's learn the lesson and finally put machlokes behind us in our generation.